The massive ship emerged from hyperspace like a whale breaching the ocean's surface. The stars stretched and twisted before settling back into their familiar patterns. Captain Daehyun Lee stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel, Endurance, her dark eyes fixed on the alien vessel that had appeared before them. Unlike any human-made craft, this one shimmered with an iridescent hull that seemed to absorb starlight, making it look like a hole in space itself. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, each focused on their tasks but stealing glances at the mysterious ship. Lieutenant Jae-ho Park's fingers danced across his console as he ran detailed scans. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Life signs confirmed," reported Lieutenant Park, his voice tight with excitement. They're completely motionless, Captain. I'm detecting over 300 beings aboard, but there's almost no movement." Captain Lee leaned forward in her chair, her brow furrowed. The alien ship, belonging to the Stellaris Collective, had initiated first contact by sending a signal into human space 3 days ago. The Endurance had been the closest ship that could respond. Now, face to face with humanity's first alien contact, things weren't going as expected. "Open a channel," Lee ordered, straightening her uniform. "Let's say hello." When the human crew appeared on their view screens, something unexpected happened. The entire alien crew froze in place. Their multiple eyes widened in what humans would later recognize as their species' fear response. The beings on screen had blue-tinted skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, but what struck the human crew most was their complete stillness. "This is most peculiar," said Science Officer Hae-Nyul Kim, analyzing the readings. "Their vital signs indicate extreme stress, but they're not moving at all. Heart rates are elevated, breathing is shallow, but they're completely immobile." Captain Lee stood and walked closer to the main view screen, studying the frozen aliens. Are they in danger? Could this be some kind of technical malfunction? "No, Captain," Kim replied, shaking her head. "All their life support systems are functioning normally. They're just not moving." Hours passed. The human crew maintained their position, sending regular greeting messages and monitoring the alien vessel. Medical Officer Min-Soo Kang suggested they might be dealing with some form of cultural shock or biological response to stress. Finally, after nearly 4 hours, one of the aliens moved. It was subtle at first. A slight twitch, then a blink of their multiple eyes. Within minutes, the entire bridge crew of the alien vessel began to show signs of movement. "They're responding to our hails," Communications Officer Yu Jin Choi announced, her voice filled with relief. The alien captain, who introduced themselves as representative of the Stellaris Collective, appeared on screen. Their voice came through the universal translator with an odd musical quality. "We apologize for our delayed response," they said. "Your appearance was unexpected. We had not anticipated your physical form." Captain Lee maintained her diplomatic composure, though her mind raced with questions. "No apology necessary. We're honored to make your acquaintance. I am Captain Daehyun Lee of the Earth vessel Endurance." The alien captain's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "You continued to wait. You did not freeze. How is this possible?" "Freeze?" Lee exchanged glances with her science officer. "Why would we freeze?" "It is the way of all spacefaring races," the alien explained, their voice carrying a note of confusion. "When faced with unknown danger or surprise, we become still until the threat passes. It is how we have survived since our earliest days. But you remained active." Fascinating. The implications of this revelation sent ripples of excitement through the human crew. Science Officer Kim was already furiously taking notes, theorizing about the evolutionary implications of such a response. "Humans have different responses to fear or surprise," Lee explained carefully. "We can fight, run, or sometimes freeze, depending on the situation. It's what helped us survive on our world." The alien captain's expression changed in a way the humans couldn't quite interpret. "Multiple responses. Your species is truly unique. This explains much about your rapid advancement into space. We have much to learn from each other. As the initial diplomatic exchanges continued, the human crew began to understand that this wasn't just first contact. It was the beginning of a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Humanity's ability to function under stress and fear would soon prove to be one of their most valuable traits in the cosmic community. The conversation lasted for several more hours, with both sides sharing basic information about their cultures and histories. The aliens were particularly interested in human stress responses and decision-making processes, while the humans were fascinated by the complex social structures of the Stellaris Collective. As the first day of contact drew to a close, Captain Lee made an entry in her personal log. Today marks not just humanity's first contact with alien life, but the discovery of a fundamental difference between us and other spacefaring races. Our ability to act in the face of fear and uncertainty isn't just a trait. It might be our greatest gift to the galaxy. Something tells me this is just the beginning of a much bigger story. She couldn't have known then how right she was, or how crucial this difference would prove to be in the challenges that lay ahead. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity's unique nature would be at the heart of that change. 6 months after humanity's first contact with alien life, Dr. Sun Mi Kang stood before the United Earth Council in the Grand Assembly Hall in Geneva. The room was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth, all eager to hear her groundbreaking findings about their galactic neighbors. The holographic displays behind her showed detailed neural scans of various alien species, their strange anatomies rotating slowly in the air. Dr. Kang took a deep breath, aware that her research would change how humanity viewed their place in the cosmos. The freeze response isn't just psychological, she explained, using a laser pointer to highlight specific areas in the alien brain scans. It's hardwired into their nervous systems. Every species we've encountered except humans exhibits this trait to some degree. When faced with unknown threats or surprises, their bodies shut down completely. The council members murmured among themselves. A representative from Brazil raised her hand. "Are you saying they have no choice in the matter?" "Exactly," Dr. Kang replied, switching to a new display showing comparative reaction times. "Their bodies freeze automatically, much like a possum playing dead. But unlike a possum, they can't control it. The response can last anywhere from a few minutes to several hours." Commander Taeyong Choi stepped forward to join her at the podium. He had just returned from a 3-month diplomatic mission aboard a Stellaris Collective vessel, and his uniform still bore their friendship pin, a crystalline structure that caught the light. "We've seen entire crews become completely immobile at the first sign of danger," he reported, his voice grave. "It's not cowardice. They simply can't help it. Last month, we encountered a small asteroid field. Nothing dangerous, just routine navigation. But when our alien allies saw it on their screens, every single one of them froze. If we hadn't been there to guide their ship through, they would have crashed." The council chamber erupted in concerned discussions. The Secretary General raised his hand for silence. "What are the implications of this for our alliance with these species?" Dr. Kang switched to a new display showing success rates in various scenarios. In controlled situations, many alien species can learn to work through their fear response with proper training. However, in genuine emergencies, the instinct always takes over. It's similar to how humans can't stop their hearts from beating faster when scared. It's an automatic response. A military advisor stood up. "What about combat situations? How do they defend themselves?" Commander Choi answered this one. "Their entire military doctrine is built around automated systems and pre-planned responses. They can fight, but only if they know exactly what's coming. Any surprise or unexpected development renders them completely helpless." Dr. Kang pulled up footage from a training exercise. The video showed an alien crew performing perfectly coordinated maneuvers, then freezing completely when an unexpected obstacle appeared. Their technology is often centuries ahead of ours, but their biological limitations have shaped their entire civilization. They build incredible automated defense systems because they can't rely on split-second decisions in emergencies. This is why they were so interested in us from the start, she continued. Humans are unique in having variable stress responses. We can fight, flee, or sometimes freeze, but we maintain the ability to choose. We can override our initial instincts and make conscious decisions, even when afraid. The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, the newcomers to galactic society, possessed something invaluable: the ability to act under pressure. A medical expert from India raised her hand. Could this response be treated, perhaps through medication or therapy? Dr. Kang shook her head. We're already working with alien medical experts on this. The freeze response is so deeply embedded in their evolution that removing it would be like trying to remove a human's ability to blink. It's not just a reflex, it's part of who they are. Commander Choi stepped forward again. But there's hope. We've been developing joint training programs. While we can't eliminate their freeze response, we can help them recover from it faster. Some species are already showing improvement, reducing their recovery time from hours to minutes. The Secretary General leaned forward. And what do our alien allies think of this research? They're thankful, Dr. Kang replied. For the first time in their history, they're learning new ways to handle fear. Several species have already requested permanent human advisors on their ships. As the presentation concluded, the council chambers buzzed with discussions about the future. Humanity's role in the galaxy was becoming clear. They would be teachers, protectors, and guides to their alien allies. Dr. Kang packed up her materials, but paused when Commander Choi touched her arm. There's something else, he said quietly. Something I haven't reported yet. Yesterday, we received word of unusual activity at the edge of known space, something that has the Stellarist Collective terrified. She looked at him, noting the concern in his eyes. How bad is it? Bad enough that they're calling an emergency meeting of all spacefaring races, he replied. And for the first time in galactic history, they're asking humans to lead the response. Dr. Kang felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever was coming, humanity's unique ability to face fear would soon be tested in ways they never imagined. The real challenge was just beginning. The warning came from the Stellar Observatory on Luna on a quiet Tuesday morning. Senior astronomer Jin Woo-song was reviewing routine data when his computer flagged something unusual. At first, he thought it was a glitch in the system. The readings made no sense. Massive objects were moving through space at speeds that should have been impossible. Jin Woo's hands trembled as he double-checked the calculations. The objects were leaving destruction in their wake. Entire asteroid fields simply vanished as they passed. He immediately sent an emergency alert to Earth Command. Within an hour, Fleet Admiral Mei-Young Lee arrived at the observatory via emergency shuttle. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled, suggesting she had dropped everything to come. The Admiral's face remained stoic as she studied the holographic display of the approaching objects. They're unlike anything we've encountered, Jin Woo reported, pointing to the energy signatures. The other species are calling them the Void Collective. Look at how they move. It's as if they're eating space itself. The Admiral leaned closer to the display. How long until they reach populated systems? At their current speed, less than 2 weeks to reach the outer colonies, Jin Woo replied. But that's not the worst part. Our alien allies. He pulled up communications from various species. They're all freezing up, just like before. Reports were flooding in from across known space. The pattern was horrifyingly familiar. Alien civilizations, faced with this overwhelming threat, simply froze. Ships stopped responding, defense stations went silent, and entire planets became paralyzed with fear. The Stellarist Collective, humanity's first alien contact, had already gone dark. Admiral Lee watched the screens as more and more alien systems went silent. Send word to all Earth forces. I want every ship we have ready to move, and get me a direct line to the Defense Council. The next few days were chaos. Humanity scrambled to prepare while their alien allies remained frozen in terror. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, preparing every vessel they could make space-worthy. training centers filled with new recruits as humanity realized they might be the galaxy's only hope. At the Emergency Defense Council meeting, Admiral Lee faced the harsh reality of their situation. "We're looking at an enemy that has already neutralized most of our allies without firing a shot," she explained to the gathered leaders. "Their freeze response has rendered them helpless. We're effectively on our own." But humanity's unique nature, their ability to function under extreme stress, was proving to be their greatest asset. While alien ships drifted aimlessly in space, their crews frozen in terror, human vessels maintained full operation. Earth's fight-or-flight response gave them options their alien allies lacked. Dr. Sun Mi Kang, now working with the military, developed emergency protocols. "We need to get human crews aboard as many alien vessels as possible," she advised. "Their technology is superior to ours. We just need to keep them operational." Teams of human operators were dispatched to key alien installations. They found entire crews frozen at their stations, advanced weapon systems sitting idle. The humans worked quickly, learning to operate alien technology on the fly. Jin Wu continued monitoring the Void Collective's approach from Luna. "They're not just destroying things," he reported to Admiral Lee. "They're consuming energy. Every system they pass through goes dark. It's like they're feeding on the very essence of civilization." Admiral Lee ordered the evacuation of outer colonies, but many colonists chose to stay and fight. Humanity's stubborn courage, once seen as a quirk by their alien allies, was becoming their greatest weapon. A week after the initial detection, the first images of the Void Collective reached Earth. The beings appeared to be living shadows, their ships made of something that absorbed all light. They moved like a swarm of locusts through space, leaving nothing but darkness behind. "We have to hold them back," Admiral Lee declared at the final strategy meeting. "Not just for Earth, but for every species that can't fight for themselves right now. We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting for the right to feel fear and act anyway." The Admiral looked at the faces around her, determined, scared, but ready. Humanity had always faced its fears head-on, from the first time they lit fires in dark caves to their first steps into space. Now that very trait made them the galaxy's last line of defense. As the Void Collective approached, humanity prepared for the biggest fight in their history. Ships were positioned, weapons were readied, and plans were made. While their alien allies remained frozen in terror, humans channeled their fear into action. Jin Wu watched from his observatory as Earth's forces moved into position. He thought about how far humanity had come, from being the newest members of galactic society to its only active defenders in just a few months. "Maybe this is why we evolved differently," he mused to himself. "Maybe the galaxy needed someone who could face the darkness without freezing. Maybe this was always our destiny." The first battle was approaching, and humanity stood ready. Their ships might have been fewer, their technology might have been simpler, but they had something the Void Collective hadn't encountered before: the ability to fight back despite their fear. The coming storm would test them all, but humanity was ready to prove that their unique response to fear wasn't just a survival trait. It was a weapon against the darkness itself. The Emergency Response Fleet gathered at the edge of the Centauri system, a collection of ships from 12 different species, all under human command. Captain Mai Rayun stood on the bridge of the flagship Aurora, watching as vessels from across the galaxy took their positions. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months ago. Humans commanding the most advanced ships in known space. "Status report," Mai Ray called out, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The bridge crew, a mix of humans and aliens, worked at their stations. The alien crew members moved slowly, fighting against their instincts to freeze, while the humans maintained a careful calm. "All ships in position," reported Navigator Bo Young Kim. "Though we're getting scattered readings from some of the alien vessels, their crews are struggling." Mireille nodded, understanding the challenge. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Yoon to all ships. Remember your training. Fear is natural, but we can work through it together. Focus on your breathing. Remember the exercises. The techniques developed by human psychologists had shown promise in training, helping some aliens overcome their instinctive responses. It wasn't perfect. Nothing could completely override millions of years of evolution, but it was something. Movement detected. Called out Sensor Officer Junho Park. The Void Collective is approaching. 3 minutes until contact. Myray watched as several alien ships began to drift out of formation. Their crews were already freezing, despite all their preparation. Human support teams aboard those vessels worked frantically to maintain basic functions. Deploy human emergency crews to vessels 7 through 12, she ordered. Get those ships back in position. The next few minutes were chaos as human crews raced to keep the fleet together. Mayray's voice remained calm over the communications channel, guiding her mixed crew through their fear management exercises. Remember, you don't have to fight the fear, she said, repeating the words they'd practiced countless times. Accept it, let it flow through you. Then act anyway. The Void Collective appeared like a tear in space itself, massive ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The sight was terrifying, and more alien crews froze. But the humans kept moving, kept working, kept fighting. All functional ships, begin attack pattern Delta, Myray commanded. The human crewed vessels moved with precision and purpose, while many alien vessels drifted helplessly. But even the drifting ships served a purpose. Their advanced shield technology, still running on automatic, provided crucial protection. The battle was unlike anything in human military history. The Void Collective's ships moved like liquid shadow, almost impossible to track. But humans had always been good at adapting, at finding patterns in chaos. They're not random, Myray realized, watching the enemy movements. They're following an energy pattern. Lieutenant Park scanned for dark matter fluctuations. The discovery helped them predict the enemy's movements. Slowly, the joint fleet began to score hits. The Void Collective, used to facing frozen opponents, seemed confused by the resistance. Hours passed. Ships were lost on both sides. But the fleet held together, protected by alien technology and guided by human determination. The alien crews that managed to keep functioning, even partially, proved invaluable. Their advanced weapons, when operated by steady human hands, were devastatingly effective. Captain, called out Communications Officer Hai-Jin Choi, we're getting movement from some of the frozen ships. Their crews, they're starting to respond. Myray allowed herself a small smile. Watching humans continue to function despite fear was having an effect. Some alien crew members were fighting through their freeze response, inspired by their human allies. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Void Collective had been pushed back. The cost was high. Dozens of ships lost, hundreds of lives from various species. But they had done what was thought impossible. They had stood their ground against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. In the aftermath, Myray walked through her ship, checking on both human and alien crew members. The aliens who had managed to function during the battle were exhausted but proud. They had discovered something about themselves, that even the strongest instincts could be overcome. We survived, said a Stellaris officer, their 4 eyes blinking in sequence. We fought back. I didn't think it was possible. Myray nodded. That's the first step. Next time, we'll do better. Reports came in from across the fleet. More alien crew members were showing signs of adapting. The sight of humans remaining functional under extreme stress was changing something fundamental in their psychology. It wasn't just about copying human behavior. It was about realizing that different responses to fear were possible. In her captain's log that night, Myray wrote, "Today marked more than just a military victory. We showed our alien allies that fear doesn't have to mean paralysis. Some of them fought beside us. Others are learning. We're all evolving together, becoming something stronger than we were alone." The victory was small compared to the larger threat, but it was enough to give hope. The galaxy was changing, one battle at a time, as humanity's influence helped other species discover their own strength. As the fleet regrouped and began repairs, Mireille knew this was just the beginning. The Void Collective would return, stronger and better prepared. But so would they. Humanity had found its role in the galaxy, not just as warriors, but as teachers, showing others how to face their fears and fight back. The stars seemed a little brighter that night, as if the darkness had retreated just a bit. They had survived, and that was enough for now. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they would face them together, humans and aliens, each learning from the other, growing stronger with every battle. Standing in the converted cargo bay of Space Station Delta, Colonel Hyunwoo Park watched as his alien students attempted the simplest of tasks, walking forward while warning lights flashed. Most of them were frozen in place, their bodies locked in position despite hours of preparation. Again, he said gently, signaling for the lights to reset. "Remember, you're safe here. The lights can't hurt you." His voice carried the patience developed from months of similar sessions. The training facility had been specially designed for this purpose. The vast room could simulate various threats while maintaining complete safety. Today's class included members of 6 different species, each with their own unique biology, but sharing the same paralyzing fear response. A Stellaris officer, taller than the others with shimmering blue skin, managed 3 steps before freezing. It was more progress than they'd shown last week. Colonel Park made a note on his tablet. "Good work, Officer Tai," he said. "You maintained movement longer this time." What was different? The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. I focused on my breathing, like you taught us. Counted the steps. It helped until the fear took over. Park finished. That's natural. It's not about eliminating fear. It's about managing it. Every step forward is progress. The training program had become the galaxy's best hope for survival. After the first battles with the Void Collective, it became clear that humanity needed to help their allies overcome their instinctive responses. Park had been chosen to lead the effort due to his background in both military training and psychology. "Let's try something new," he announced. "Partner exercises. Human students, pair up with our alien colleagues." The human trainees, who served as both assistants and demonstration subjects, moved to stand beside their alien counterparts. Park had discovered that direct observation of human stress responses helped aliens understand different ways of handling fear. "Watch your human partner," he instructed. "Notice how they react when the lights flash. They feel fear, their heart rates increase, their muscles tense, but they can still move. They can still think. They can still act." The next exercise began. Warning lights flashed, accompanied by loud alarms. The human trainees showed visible signs of stress, but continued moving. Some of the alien students managed to maintain minimal movement by focusing on their partners. A breakthrough came when one of the Centaurian officers, a crystalline being named Rix, completed the entire exercise without freezing. The achievement brought a rare display of emotion from the normally reserved species, a soft chiming sound that indicated joy. "How did it feel?" Park asked, gathering the class around. "Terrible," Rix answered through the translator. "My body screamed to stop. But I kept thinking about the Void Collective, about my people who died because we couldn't move. The fear was still there, but something else was stronger." Park nodded, recognizing a crucial moment in the training. "That's exactly it. Fear isn't your enemy. Sometimes it can even help you. The key is not letting it make decisions for you." The training continued day after day. Park worked with military forces from dozens of species, developing methods tailored to each one's unique biology and psychology. Progress was slow, but it was steady. Some species learned to overcome their freeze response through focused breathing techniques. Others found success through visualization exercises. The crystalline Centaurians discovered they could use their natural resonance frequencies to disrupt the fear response. Each species has to find their own way. Park explained during a briefing to Earth Command. We can't make them like us, and we shouldn't try. The goal is to help them find their own strength. The breakthrough moments were small but significant. A Stellaris crew managing to operate their ship's weapons during a surprise drill. A Centaurian squad maintaining formation during a simulated attack. An Arcturian medic continuing to treat patients while under stress. Word spread through the galaxy. More species requested training. The facility expanded, with new modules designed to simulate different types of threats and scenarios. Park's methods were adapted and implemented across multiple training centers. But the most significant change was cultural. Species that had evolved to see fear as an absolute stop signal began to view it differently. They started sharing stories of small victories, of moments when they pushed through their instincts. What you're doing here is more than military training, Admiral Mayung Lee told Park during an inspection. You're helping them rewrite millions of years of evolution. Park watched as another class ran through their exercises. An alien officer who had completely frozen last week managed to move their arm during a simulation. Their human partner cheered. And for a moment, fear gave way to pride. The Void Collective expects us to freeze, Park told his students at the end of each session. They expect us to be helpless. Every time you move when your instincts say stop, you're proving them wrong. Every step you take is an act of defiance. Admiral Kwan watched as the tide began to turn. The Void Collective's perfect coordination faltered as they faced opponents who refused to freeze. Their strategy, built around paralyzed prey, fell apart against united resistance. All ships, push forward, she ordered. Don't let them regroup. The final phase of the battle was devastating. Hundreds of ships were lost on both sides, but the Allied fleet pressed their advantage. The Void Collective, for the first time in their existence, began to retreat. As the enemy fled, leaving their dead behind, a cheer went up across the fleet. Species that had never shown emotion before sang with joy. Humans and aliens celebrated together, united by something stronger than fear. Battle report, Admiral Kwan requested quietly, even as the celebrations continued around her. The numbers were staggering. Nearly a third of their fleet lost, thousands of lives from dozens of species. But they had won. They had pushed back the darkness itself. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors, Admiral Kwan wrote in her log, "Today marked more than a military victory. We proved that fear doesn't have to define us. Every species can choose to be more than their instincts. Every being can choose to fight back against the darkness." The Void Collective had been driven back to the edges of known space. They would return someday, but the galaxy would be ready. The alliance forged in fear and courage would only grow stronger. As the fleet began its long journey home, carrying their wounded and their dead, Admiral Kwan looked out at the stars. They seemed brighter somehow, as if the very act of fighting back had made the galaxy shine more boldly. The darkness had been pushed back, not just by humans, but by every species that had chosen to overcome their fear. It was a new beginning for all of them, written in starlight and courage and hope. 2 years after the final battle against the Void Collective, Professor Min Ji-yoon sat in her office at the Galactic Research Institute, reviewing the final draft of her research paper. The walls around her were covered with holographic displays showing brain scans from dozens of different alien species, each telling the same remarkable story. The data was clear and unprecedented. Exposure to human methods had begun changing how other species responded to fear. Young aliens, particularly those born after first contact with humans, were showing more varied stress responses. Some even displayed primitive fight or flight reactions similar to humans. "Professor, you need to see this," called out her research assistant, Ji-hun Lee, rushing into the office with new data from the outer colonies. The Stellaris younglings, they're showing completely new neural patterns. Min Ji examined the scans with growing excitement. The changes were happening faster than anyone had predicted. The galaxy wasn't just recovering from the war, it was evolving. In the nurseries of the Stellaris Collective, young aliens no longer froze completely when startled. Instead, they showed a range of responses. Some ran, others confronted the source of their fear. Their parents, watching in amazement, reported behaviors they had never seen before in their species' history. The Centaurians, whose crystalline bodies had once locked up entirely under stress, were developing new resonance patterns that allowed them to maintain mobility even when afraid. Their young could now choose between different responses to threat, a flexibility that would have been impossible just a few years ago. At the military academy on Mars, alien cadets trained alongside humans, learning not just tactics but new ways of handling fear. The freeze response was still there, but it had become just one option among many, not an unavoidable reaction. It's more than just behavioral adaptation, Minji explained during her presentation to the Galactic Science Council. We're seeing actual changes in neural architecture, especially in younger generations. The ability to choose how to respond to fear is becoming hardwired into their biology. The implications were staggering. Humanity had done more than save civilization. They had helped it evolve. Their influence had triggered changes that would reshape galactic society for generations to come. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, now retired Admiral Sujin Quan watched as representatives from a dozen species engaged in heated debate. 2 years ago, such intense disagreement would have triggered mass freezing. Now they argued passionately, moved freely, and showed a range of emotional responses that would have been impossible before. "Quite a change, isn't it?" said a voice beside her. Colonel Hyun-woo Park, his hair now gray from years of service, sat down next to her. "Sometimes I still can't believe how far they've come." Sujin nodded, remembering the early days when alien crews would freeze at the slightest surprise. "Our greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't our bravery or our technology," she said softly. "It was showing them they could change." The evidence of that change was everywhere. In schools across the galaxy, young aliens learned to manage their fears rather than be controlled by them. In spaceship crews, different species worked together, each bringing their own strengths and helping others overcome their weaknesses. The Void Collective had not been seen since their defeat, but the galaxy was ready if they ever returned. The combined fleet, now stronger than ever, maintained constant vigilance. But more importantly, the species of the galaxy had learned to face their fears together. In research centers throughout known space, scientists studied the ongoing changes. Each new generation showed more adaptability, more resilience. Species that had once been paralyzed by fear were learning to use it as a tool, a guide, rather than letting it be their master. Professor Min Ji-yoon's paper became the most cited work in xenobiology history. The evolution of fear response in galactic species, the human impact, sparked a new field of study focused on cross-species psychological development. But perhaps the most profound changes were the smallest ones. A young Stellaris child choosing to face a scary situation instead of freezing. A Centaurian leader showing emotion during a crisis. An Arcturian medical team maintaining function during an emergency. In her office at the Institute, Minji added one final note to her research. "The true miracle isn't that humans helped other species overcome their fears. It's that in doing so, we showed them, and ourselves, that no species has to be limited by their past. Evolution isn't just about physical change. It's about discovering what we can become when we dare to be more than our instincts." The galaxy continued to change and grow. New challenges would come, new fears would arise. But now, thanks to humanity's influence, every species had the tools to face those fears together. The age of paralysis was over. The age of choice had begun. *, the end*.